Hey everyone, good afternoon. We have some pretty important flips coming up here, so let's see if we can finally retest the high ranges here. I'm just going to start deleting some of these candles that we had. Just, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me, or maybe share it in the Discord too? I forgot to share it in there. I haven't streamed in 2 days. I just want to make sure that the mic's working. Sometimes when I reboot this, it doesn't always work. So we've got some really important sticks here and flips at 09 and 10. I was really wanting them to clear 5-4, 5-5. This is probably one of the better odds of finally testing and breaking these structural highs here and these stalls at 68.57, 75. There it is, 6857, 75 being retested here at exactly 309. This is a very important flip for direction this afternoon. These are crucial points in the day. This is what's going to give us extensions for potentially duration of the session. Okay. And a lot of these would just basically negate these really nasty bear flags that formed. So, and ideally what we want to do is we want to at least get back to the midpoint here. Okay, so like kind of getting back into these ranges in here at the least, which ideally means getting back to that 69, 66, 71. We want to break 7-1. That's kind of the goal. So we have until end of session to do so. But this is kind of the median point between here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Do you see that? Like around 309, 310. So I think at the least if they test 5-8, that should give us some decent odds. And that's probably about 50% of this mid bar here too, is getting back over this area here. Yeah, it is. 5-8 is exactly 50% of that mid 3 bar. Okay. And 75% is approximately where they stalled around 6-1, 6-2, 6-4. So this is a pretty big spot here and a really important time of day of retesting 6857.50 and 6857.75. Can someone document that, please? Because that is a really, really important point in the day and a really important price point. Also, well, just listen, Noble Mom. Also, I noticed that these ranges in here are in line with the previous highs. So like not the actual lows, but more so like the high ranges. So when I was looking at this in terms of like these past structures, especially on the old contract. So you can't really tell here, but do you see what I mean? Like around these points here. It's not the exact range, but closer to like 7.2, 7.3, especially when you're looking at it off the old contract. There's a lot of overhead that's pretty clear around those price points. I would say that the condition was met since we at least took out 5.7. I would have preferred to have taken out 5.7, 7.5, 5.8. But that, I think that's enough to keep this at least extended until the end of that duration of the session. And I just want to see the immediate rejection sticks in terms of how much range that is and whether they're aligned to that 6-1 or 6-3 spot. Yeah, they are. So had they cleared 5-8, there was some odds here for them to have cleared it back up to try retesting this 6-3, 6-2 failure right here. Do you guys see that? Okay. I don't want to miss any of my exits either, so. We can also track the 9-minute today a little bit just because I noticed some alignment with those points in time. So like we can watch for that 318 window. Or I also noticed that they stalled 6892 this morning too, when those numbers printed. And they also did take out the zone here at 8:30, but they never closed above it. But lots of confluence around the 8:30, 8:31 prints this morning too. So maybe we could use like a 13-minute, 67-minute. Those could have some pretty good alignment with those points in the day. A lot of them are after the bell today too, which I've noticed. Or some like extended flips like pretty late in the day. Most of these are after the close though. So let's see, there's some, seems like there's some odds for turnaround around the 14 through 18. If they don't sustain during this period here, especially considering the stall at 5.8, that's where you could cut this. Because I think this period's pretty important for at least trying to sustain this area, at least above that. The only issue is they never closed it above the channel again. Even though 3 o'clock was a lot stronger than the 2 o'clock stick, they still kept it beneath the 4.8, 4.9 area here ahead of 3. And then 3 o'clock obviously came out and took out that full range, but we still have some risk of re-entering the channel in here. Let's see if they can immediately negate off some of these ranges. I never checked to see if there's any flag-like scenarios, like maybe the 10-minute from that 310. We can maybe see if it stays stuck inside and then flips around like 320. I also wanted to see if there's some wider structures, or even just the ones that bottomed around like 221, 220 this afternoon. Let me see if there's any structures that formed. Like this could be a good one for like extensions on that 4th bar. Same with this one here. I don't see any flags though. Okay, maybe a bit more. Like this isn't proper structure though. I like the 27-minute. I like that it's aligned with 309. That seems closer though to after the bell or during imbalance prints. That's not the best looking 3-bar structure though. There's also this, but same idea. So maybe they're 30-minute plus. 30 minutes nice. These are some nice flags into the close, guys. Can someone track these for me? Brendan or Zabin or whoever is, I don't know who's trading right now, but these could be some nice ones to track. This could be a good one to see if they try to negate by 342, which means trying to bring it back. This is actually a really nice one because if they try bringing back the range, which means maybe taking out this mid supply here and saving the 3rd bar from going red so that we can have like a 4th bar continuation. This flips at 342. This is an interesting one since it stalled there. And I love that the mid supply is aligned with 5.8. Okay, so it's not really about the pattern, it's more so like the areas it formed at. It's also aligned with the 4-4, which I really like. There's a lot of odds around 327, 328. I just want to see if any of these have some nicer flag-like structures. So far, none of these are valid enough. This one is okay. But notice none of these took out the highs though, like right here. So 37, which is why I was thinking maybe odds are higher into the close or after the bell. This isn't bad. 40 minutes the first valid bull flag, and this flips at 320. I would imagine then that the 41, 42, something like that already has a valid formation, and that included that 310 period because this flipped at 311. This is really clean too. That runs till 352, so this could be something that goes with those late odds that we're talking about. Okay, so we can maybe track these into the close today. This one runs until the close. This could be like the sustainment period or something like that. 49 minutes also really clean. So some odds at 336, which I'll note. Just give me a second though. 320, 21 had probably the most confluence along with 327, 328, 336. And then these really late odds around 352, 53. And most of these were after the close. Let me see here. 52. What did we say? 40 is 320. We can still track these ones, but for 336, but the structures are not as clean because of how they got stuck inside, but we'll still watch 335, 336. I think a really important period right here though is this 320, 321 because the most valid flag-like pattern is this 40 minute, which flips at 320. So I would expect 320 to have some decent structures on that stick break. And then we can obviously watch the 31 or the ones that had like these mid-bar stalls that run till 342. And the median between 311 and 42 would be, so 15 minutes after 311, 15 and a half is 326 and a half. So that aligns with that 327 confluence here. So in other words, if they can clear this area by that 327 window, then there's some odds of getting in to test these ranges here around like that 6-1, 6-3, and then that's what will give us those odds for testing the full structure into the close. Okay, so far this worked out in terms of sustaining at 315, 314. 320 getting back over 5-5. I would imagine that this is probably the period here. We can watch 326 since there's the 326 and a half interval, and that's ahead of the 27 flip. This is probably one of the most crucial windows for continuation this afternoon. And I didn't mark 342 off that bar, but we could just watch it when that point in the day comes. Okay, and I always watch 348, 349, 350 anyway, along with 355, 54. So we're going to watch those just as our end of day flips. Okay, is everyone on the same page here? Because I'm going to go quiet and I'm going to focus a little bit, okay? This is good that they're retesting this area ahead of 2627 because this gives us some odds now to try clearing that 61, 63 during this period. So that's actually really good that they're doing that. We'll see if we can get some good structure breaks here. There's the 5-8 break finally. We should be able to see some clearance breaks here. Really nice sticks and like perfect timing for this too, so that this gives us odds at least of getting that 6-3, 6-4 break. My goal for today is to see if they can get this back over 68.71. As much as I'd love for them to take this to 6.888, I don't think it's entirely required, but these are really nice structure breaks, guys, here ahead of the 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 period. That gives us odds of retesting the 68, 63, and ideally getting like a 6.8, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6 tag this time. Because we want to try getting basically core odds in play before the second half of the last hour. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you guys? Well, at least having core odds so that you can have odds of 7-1, 7-8, 8-1, 8-4, and not be stuck in the means between 6-4 and 5-2, or have odds of like retracing back here, because we already have this odd working against us since they kept it stuck in the channel just slightly before 3. So to offset that, I feel like they'd probably have to try clearing or at least testing 6-6 before the mid half to mitigate this risk of like this. Let's see here. Let's watch this in the 10-second intervals, just because the earliest odd on this was the 30-second mark, so that would be here, okay, of retesting the 60.5. So let's see. That's a pretty good stick here ahead of that 26.30 second interval. This was the point in time where they could retest 68.60.5, 68.61. Yeah, or just kind of stalling or staying stuck. It seems like most of the odds are into the bell or like just after the close. But I feel like if they can at least get us to test these areas here, even if it's just after, like the before 3:30 obviously increases odds. That's what would mitigate this risk. Those odds are not very high though. But it seems more likely maybe by like the 36 or 42 period. At the least, though, it would be nice if they could at least test this 6-1 during this time. Otherwise, that risk is going to stay pretty high. Okay, let me just remove these so I can see the structure here a bit better. They're trying really hard to not break down 5-8 off the 2-7, 2-6 periods, but where did they stall? They stalled at 60. 60 is not high enough. They need closer to 60.50. So they're kind of stalling 50-cent intervals, I've noticed, because back in here at 310, do you guys see this? How they stalled 50 cents? They did the same thing right here. They're stalling about 50 cents. So let's see how long it took them to turn that around. It took about 3 minutes of downside and then 12 minutes total for them to break. So that should align with our 36. Yeah, it does. Do you see that? That's actually pretty cool. Do you see this? This took about 12 to 13 minutes. So maybe from these stalls here, we can measure like 12 to 13 minutes. So that 3:36 to 3:38 window, I think would be probably my cutoff for this stalling. And if they did it sooner, it would be like the negation period or the downside risk period, which was about 4 to 5 minutes max. You could maybe measure 4 to 5 minutes. So I think the earliest, if they want to negate that, would be around the 3:2. Okay. So that means that they actually could still have that if this was 3 to 5 minutes. Sorry, actually, how much time is this? 3 minutes from 2 7. Technically the earliest would be 3:30. And we're already watching 3:30. Okay. And that's how we know that they could utilize the 3:36, 3:38 period to continue. If they clear as early, I guess, as 3:30, because that would be the 3 to 4 minute period. So it's basically like instead of exhausting, they recycle it up. Does that make sense? So 3:30 has a really high odd then of clearing 60.5. Can someone document that? 3:30 testing 6861. This is breaking range within the earliest interval of this exhaustion period that occurred the first time and offsetting that 0.50 interval here, which can really help odds and give us some continuation, especially through that 3:36, 3:38 period here. Okay. Okay, I need to focus on my positions here a little bit. That's a really good stick break, guys, to 6250, especially off 3:30, considering this is the earliest period that they had to turn this around. This is basically the 3-minute exhaustion that they had here, reversed. So what that basically means is you could see, and this is how you get those extension periods. Basically this range down could be used up. Do you see what I'm saying? So I would imagine that there'd be maybe some overhead around, this should align with 6566. Do you see it? Let me just clear the chart so we can measure the exact range. So yeah, probably close to 7.5 points. And if we measure them from the lows of our 2728, that's around 6475. From open close, it's around 65. From the actual open closing sticks, it's 66. Do you see that? And off the high ranges, it should align probably to 67, 68. And that's the range that we could trigger within this period, basically, because this is them extending it. Okay? And the earliest odds would be this 3-4 minute interval, which is between 3:30, 3:32, because that's the 3 minutes here from 3:27, 3:28, or 4-minute period. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you guys understand this concept or no? This is basically them offsetting the risk. You should have been able to make some pretty good money here, guys. My contracts just went from 70 cents to almost $2, so you should be able to cover some here if you want. Especially knowing that those odds were quite high. And even 680s are almost in the money now too. Okay, let's see what they do here. Yeah, I could see some individual names probably getting some good moves during these periods. You could trade individuals too. These periods have really good odds for expansions basically. Plus Tesla also was an engulfing pattern. But do you see this? Look, this period between 330, 332, 336 is basically a mini expansion period for ES here in terms of offsetting risk. And ES is basically doing that, which gives some odds for some of these individual names to do the same thing, which is really, really cool. And that means that you could hit 6.6, 6.7. What did we say was that overhead? 6.7, 7.5 or 2.5 or something like that. That was the calculated overhead. This means that we could try triggering 7.1 as early as that 36 to 38 period. That's insane. Okay, I need to focus because I did miss one of my first exits. So the stream start costing me money, then I stop streaming. Okay. And so far it cost me $100. Thank you. Those initial contracts are over 2 on that break. That's a huge move on that. We should see single sticks here, I would imagine, before. There were some flips at 35, but anyway, 3.5 is aligned with 3.6. There's multi-flips at 3.6, so I'm thinking 336 is a core flip, which means the breaks of like 6.8, 6.9, 7.1. 335 clearing here is huge. Imagine they take this back to the zone, you guys. If they took this back to the zone, that would be insane. Market makers know the risk of the conditions today, which means they know that if they kept this down here, that we're at risk of 67.20, 6744 on the old contract, okay? And I mentioned that earlier today, which means that they could do what? What could they do for us today? Based on today being a big structural flip, based on it being a potential exhaustion / continuation flip, you have to understand the dynamics of the flip. 68.70 being tested right at 336. They seem like the highest odd of clearing 7.1 based on what they did here. They basically recycled this range on the upside. 68.71 being triggered at exactly 336. This could easily give us odds for expansions to occur during this 337.38 window. That's a huge window for potential expansion / exhaustion between 338, 342. This means that the zone is in play, guys. 68.88 should be in play, at least for duration of the session. It might not be in real time, but they definitely have some odds here for after the bell based on this kind of price action that they're doing at these points in the session today. Can someone send some updates on like the time frames that we're working with? Like here's the 40-minute. That's a really clean setup, and it was a really nice turnaround around that 316, 320 period, at least until 4 o'clock. This runs till 4. Okay, and you can kind of see how these ones all run till 4 and could give us those extensions, continuation patterns. Where was that one time frame that had, was it the 31-minute? That had that mid bar. Remember how I said that if they push this during this period between 311 to 342, we have odds of testing the top of this range here. That's 6878. That flips at 342, and that could keep us extended till 413. So that would be duration until SPY contracts close at 415. Okay, meaning they could trigger the zone before the SPY contracts close off. Does that make sense? It might not be in real time, but it could be, I guess, real-time durations for SPY, not for SPX, but for SPY at least. And this would be the 3rd bar right now, and this flips into the 4th bar. Your 4th bar could be what? What could your 4th bar be? Quickly. You guys, no one else is going to jump on a stream and share in real time when I'm in trades. Like, it's at the exact moment that we're going to see structure breaks. Well, they could expand or exhaust. If they want to expand this, they would break it to 8-8. If they want to exhaust, they'll probably just end up stalling here a little bit. Okay. Those would be the odds. I need to start setting some alerts because I'm going to get distracted here. So far, the 3-8 to 4-1 period is exhausting a little bit. So, and I noticed every time they've exhausted, it's been about 5 to 5.5 points. And that's probably because they want to stall from getting to 7-8, just like back here, how they wanted to stall from getting to 6-6. So 7-8 is for sure the overhead, around 7-8, 7-8.50. And we could use the extended periods here through end of session today. That's a huge area though at 7-1, so just be very mindful of these spots, obviously. Do whatever you guys have to do. I just don't want to be missing my exits because I already missed one. I'd say the 42 period's very important to sustain this 6-7, 6-6, and maybe try retesting 7-1. I don't think it has to take out 7-1, but I think if it does, that's going to help its odds a little bit. And then, of course, we can watch 345 since this is going to be the final 15 duration, too. The actual flips we're watching, though, are 352, 53. I think there was a late day flip just before the close, but anyway, most of these are durational till after the bell. So I'm probably, unless some major structure breaks, I'm probably going to hold these SPY contracts until after the close because there's some odds for continuation after the bell here. And there's a flip at 13. So can someone also track the 9-minute and the 13-minute, please? Because that's aligned with highs and lows. Just to see if we have some confluence here or some flag-like structures, like the 9-minute has 1, 2, 3, 4. This flips at 45, so that's good. And 5-4, so that's good because it includes our periods and that 03 and that 12. So this is a really good time frame to keep on radar this afternoon. The 10-minute was that initial flag break, 1, 2, and this is obviously every 10-minute intervals. And then the 13 was in alignment with highs. This kind of runs at 353. So I guess we can watch the 45 window here just to see if they turn it around or if they start exhausting here, because this could easily be a period of exhaustion if they wanted to stall. Is 7-1 enough to have been considered a max range? Had they not extended this? These are core areas, by the way, or core ratios. If they clear these areas here, this would be a 66-point break. Whereas getting to 8-8 would be the 70-71. Those are core ratios. Even if they take this back to core ranges, that's still better than keeping it down here. And that at least can give us some odds. On the old contract, we said that we wanted to get back over the 68.20s, so they're pretty close. 68.18. So I think they need a tiny bit higher here. This is definitely an area that they could expand or exhaust, and it's within that fourth bar too, so it would make sense. $345 so far, exhausting here a little bit. Let's just remove these so it's easier to see. 338 so far is the stall of these highs, because this was the period that if they really want to keep pushing, they could have, and they stalled. What do you guys think? Give me your max range for the session. Can you guys also send the Twitch to the Discord? Because I never sent it. And views are pretty low. See if they can turn this around during the 348, 350 window. Even though the flips today are at 352, 53, we're obviously going to watch ahead of the 350. Like, that's always an important time of day, but I'm trying to color coordinate these though so that we know which ones are flips and which ones are just generic points for the session. All right, let's see here. Give me your max ranges, guys, for the session here. If I'm going to be taking away from my own trades and you guys are going to be sitting and watching, then at least try to participate. This could easily be a max stall here around that 7-1, but beneath 7-4, 7-6. If they really wanted to push this, I would say they probably have to hold at least 5-8, ideally over 6-1, 6-4. And so far, this kind of structural break is pretty bad for odds of expanding. I feel like they'd really have to sustain or turn this around off that 348, 350 window, because this is not a good spot. Where's the 350? This is a more ideal area. I feel like once they start getting closer to here, the risk is going to increase. This is also a period where they could just reset those closing points too, like they did before. So this is the current downside risk, is this area here. And this is the upside overhead in this area here. I didn't mark anything in between here, but because above 7.1 but beneath 7.7 basically doesn't really progress us. So it's like, it's a okay spot, but I feel like they need at least above 7.1, because on the old contract this is still beneath 68.20. Does that make sense? Like on the old contract this is the 68.16 18 area, which is okay, but it's not high enough. I feel like they'd need a bit higher, like at least closer to like 7.6, 7.7, 7.8. That's going to be the same thing as getting back to 68.22, 24 on the old contract. So let's see. And if they get back to 68.33 on the old contract, that's the same thing as getting back to 6.888 on the new contract. So exiting the zone on the old contract is entering the new zone on the new contract, which is kind of cool. 350 trying its best to avoid going back beneath 6.63, 6.4. Trying to test 7.1, stalling so far. Let's see if they can try getting some late breaks. Otherwise, that risk stays high. There's better odds around the 352 to 53 period anyway, which is why there could be an extension here. I think that needs to at least hold 6.6 though. Otherwise, that risk can easily bring this back to retest 5.8. You see how they're kind of just like flatlining this right here? So let's see, there's some odds after 350, which is the only reason why this could stay in play. Usually that's not the case, but today it is. So 351, 2, 3 have to be strong, okay, for this to at least have some odds. I just marked the 51 to see if there's follow through, but the actual flips are 52, 53. And then the 9-minute does flip at 5.4, which is nice because it aligns with our daily patterns that we see here. So let's see. Who thinks we'll get an end of day ramp to 7.881 in real time? Who here thinks that they're going to stall around these core ranges here? 7.6, 7.8 is really the big structural break that will give us those bigger movements. And I feel like if they don't break this range here by 5.2, 5.3, those odds are pretty low. And the nice thing today too is these being at 5.2, 5.3, okay, why is that a good thing? Like, especially if they do take out these ranges here, like these high ranges here, why would that be a good thing? Hurry. Why would that be good if they take out these ranges at this point? How can that help our odds? I just want to delete these because it's kind of hard to see. How would this help our odds if they end up taking out these ranges here off 5.3, 5.4? So far they're stalling. This is the closing price. Let me just shade this. No, just think about it, you guys. What channel? We're not even anywhere close to a channel. Why would them testing 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 at this point in time be beneficial for us? The flips are at 53. We rarely have flips around 5.3. Okay. 5.3. And there is one at 5.4 off that 9-minute. Why would that be helpful for us? And I want to see if they can get it back over basically these structures, or at least sustain within these structures here, like those high of day structures. Okay. You guys did not get the concept, but... What does 354, 355 usually give us odds of? Okay, so if these are ahead, that can really help you save the range or extend range, okay, off the 5-5, 5-4. So they stalled at 5-3, 5-2. That's unfortunate, okay? But had they broken or cleared at 5-2, 5-3, you probably would have seen a massive stick up at 5-4, 5-5. Do you get what I'm saying? So far they stalled it. So that doesn't really help. That means that 5-5 has to be kind of the final point to turn this around here. Because now you're seeing the volatility come in at 5-4. Do you see what I'm saying? So now 5-5 is kind of the final stick. This could have been the breaking stick had they cleared. And you guys can measure that range yourselves because I need to focus on these last few contracts here. See if they can take out 7-1. What is that spot? 6-8-7. I'm just going to mark 7-2 here. I think it's 7-1, 7-5. Or something like that. So far, 5-5 is struggling a little bit with these ranges. And that reduction was an overall 5.25 again. 5.25 has been a very common reduction. That could have taken this to 7.6, 7.7, and I bet anything 7.8. Do you see it? The max range would have been 7.8.50 had they cleared here on time. So see if they have an immediate negation stick here at 5.6 since 5.5 tested but stalled, which could keep us durational till the end of session. Most of the odds for today anyway were after the session closes. So we'll see what kind of range breaks they give us. So far they're stalling these high of day ranges though. Which again, like I said, they might wait until just after the close or into the close if they wanted to, or just keep it stuck since they know that this is technically enough range and that they don't really have to take it too much higher than here if they don't want to. It would be more beneficial if they did though, because this isn't even 68.20s on the old contract, and basically you do not want to close in a neutral zone on the old contract. They also left risk open between that 60 and 5.8. So right now they're kind of trading in between both ends of the trade. Basically they have 5 points above, 5 points below. Is one way that you can think about that. We'll see though if they can try saving some of this range for the final like 2-3 minutes of the session today. There was also those odds after the close at 403, 406, 413. 5.8 though, testing this range in here though is definitely not a good thing. Because that leaves the room for 6.158 to be back tested into the close here, which is exactly what they're doing. This was like a 1.5 minute 3-bar reversal. So I'd watch maybe the 30-second interval here on this final end of day stick. And we said 5.7 was around the minimum range. Ideally over 7.1. Otherwise, this is going to keep risk at play until end of month, which really is what it looks like they're going to do based on this kind of range that they brought this back down to. I think that was pretty obvious too when they stalled 5.2, 5.3 and then didn't continue there at 5.5. And then that final stall at 5.6 kind of just gave you everything you need to know. They could easily still bring this back though after the bell because odds were higher after the close. But I would say a 5.4, 5.5 close is still, that can still put the market at quite some risk. We'll see if they have any sort of strength into the actual end of session close, but to me on the old contract this looks pretty weak because that would be a close in the bear zone, okay, or like in a neutral range. So at the very least you want them to try bringing it back over 6.6, 7.1. Otherwise I could say that with confidence we're probably in a very bearish spot for a very big structural flip date, okay? I just want to see if they try turning this around that 403, 406 window, or if they bring this back to the channel. Any questions, guys, before I end the stream, or was this pretty straightforward? I feel like these overheads here were huge. I missed that first exit there, but then I was able to bring it back around that 55 period. It's a shame that they didn't clear 7.1 though at this point in time. This can definitely keep us sideways from now until month end though. Especially since a lot of these are now potentially stuck. And you can see how they're stuck too. Look at this inside bar from here until the second. So this, it doesn't mean that we can't retest all-time highs. It just means that this could be very sideways like price action, okay? So, which is going to be recycling a lot of the ranges now from now until month end. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of the same ranges over and over and over again. Does that make sense? Which is kind of like what they did today, because there was a lot of repetition today too, where they just kept recycling the ranges. I feel like they could easily do that again. Okay, I'm going to end the stream here.